সুপ্রিয় সুধী, এখন দেখবেন প্রথম আন্তঃস্কুল ইংরেজি বিতর্ক প্রতিযোগিতা ফাইনাল পর্ব 2023। অনুষ্ঠানটি আপনাদের জন্য প্রযোজনা করেছেন গোলাম মোর্শেদ ও মুস্তাফিজুর রহমান।
Dear audience, Assalamu alaikum. It's a proud privilege to welcome you all on the final round of the very first inter-school English debate competition organized by Bangladesh Television Chattogram Center. Speech is power. It is the power to persuade, to convert, to compel. And when that speech is expressed in the form of a debate, it becomes a method of interactive and representational argument in which students participate and argue both sides of a given topic, trying to persuade one another. I believe that the pursuit of right ideas and honest debate through rigorous argument is a noble undertaking. When students participate in debate, they start to look into issues in depth and form perspectives. And this powerful tool for creating an innovative and a logical mind leads to increasing the confidence level of a student as well as their scope of knowledge. Dear audience, the finalists here today have not only gone through 5 rigorous stages of competition to make it to their final round, but through this process, they have transformed themselves into the epitome of smart and logical thinkers. Very much thrilled to be listening to their powerful voices echoing in this room tonight. I, your host, without further ado, would love to invite you all to come along and enjoy our very lively debate competition participated by our 2 final teams. Today, the selected motion for the debate competition is: developing an export-oriented business environment is better driver of our economy than relying on remittance. The team for the motion belongs to Mymensingh Girls Cadet College. The team against the motion belongs to Faujdarhat Cadet College. Speakers for the motion are Cadet Azrin, Cadet Rafa, Cadet Tatria. Speakers against the motion are Cadet Jawad, Cadet Sajid, Cadet Shafin. The honorable adjudicators of today's session are Dr. Shamim Mirza, Professor, Department of Mass Communication and Journalism, University of Dhaka; Dr. Adnan Mannan, Professor, Department of Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology, University of Chittagong; Mashur Shakil, Senior Reporter, Channel I. The topics on which our honorable judges are going to assign marks in the constructive round are Presentation 5, Language and Pronunciation 10, Presentation of Theory and Information 15, Argumentation and Rebuttal 10. The topics on which our honorable judges are going to assign marks in the rebuttal round are Presentation 5, Language and Pronunciation 5, Argumentation and Rebuttal 20. Dear viewers, now I would love to introduce you to our honorable moderator of today's program, who will be conducting the entire competition and announce the results at the end. The honorable moderator of today's competition is Professor Dr. Sukanta Bhattacharjee, Chairman, Department of English, University of Chittagong. Now, I would most humbly like to request you, sir, to come up on the stage and take your seat. Before we start the debate, I would like to inform you about the order and time allocation of each debater. Each debater will get 5 minutes to present his or her speech. An alarming bell will ring on the 4th minute and the final bell will ring on the 5th minute. In the rebuttal round, both the team leaders will get 2 minutes each. Alarming bell will ring on 1.5 minute and the final bell will ring on the 2nd minute. Dear audience, before moving on to the competition, I would like to give you a friendly reminder that from now onwards, you can not only watch all of these episodes on your television set, but also on Facebook and YouTube. Tune in on facebook.com/btvchattogram and www.youtube.com/@btvchattogram. Now, I would most humbly like to request our honorable moderator,
Debate Competition 2023. In today's final round, two teams are competing with each other. The team who should speak for the motion is Mymensingh Girls Cadet College, and against the motion, Faujdarhat Cadet College will speak. Now, I would like to request the first speaker of Mymensingh Girls Cadet College, Cadet Azreen, to speak for the motion.
In this grand symphony of economic progress, we picture remittance as our background singer, where the main vocals microphone only belong to export-oriented business environment. Honorable moderators, judicious panel of judges, fellow debaters, and today's distinguished guests, a very good day to you all. The motion of today's debate is, developing an export-oriented business environment is a better driver of the economy than relying on remittance income. And we firmly stand as today's proposition. I, as the first speaker, will be defining the motion, my second speaker will be elaborating the facts, and my third speaker will do the rebuttal. Now, before defining the topic, I'd like to enlighten the term foreign currency. Foreign currency is a form of monetary exchange with a foreign country. And foreign currency is mainly earned in two ways. Number one, remittance, and number two, export. Remittance is the money earned by the citizens working abroad and sent back to their home country. Export means to send goods and services to foreign countries in exchange of money. Export-oriented business environment refers to a setting where a significant portion of the country's economy is geared towards producing foreign currency, thereby increasing its export and its income. Remittance income is often serving as a crucial source of income for the foreign country. Now, driver simply means a factor or component that accelerates the economic growth of the country. And lastly, the motion of today means that developing an export-oriented industrial environment is a better choice for the economic growth of the country than relying on remittance. And this is what we believe and what we are going to prove today. Now let's move on to some of the arguments to prove my stand. Firstly, economic diversification. Relying solely on remittance puts the country at the risk of over-dependency on a single source of income. On the other hand, developing an export-oriented business environment allows the country to have more industries, to flourish various industries like textile, jute, leather, shrimp, pharmaceuticals, and so on, which have been reducing our vulnerability. And according to Daily Star, these sectors have been increasing our GDP to 35.5%. And according to Business Inspection, my dear opponents, Bangladesh export earnings hit a record of $52.08 billion marking dollars in the year 2022. Secondly, prosperity. The Financial Express on July 2022 expressed that the remittances received by our country in the fiscal year 2022 to 2023 was $21.61 billion, whereas Dhaka Tribune the very next day explained that the export earnings of our country in the same fiscal year was $55.55 billion, my dear opponents, which is more than twice of the remittances we have earned. So, my dear opponents, even if you're blind, I think you will still see the differences here. Thirdly, job creation. Let's define the term trickle-down effect first. Trickle-down effect is a model of product adoption that affects many other goods and services. Honorable Moderator, let me give the example of cadet courses here. When the first cadet course was established, we saw that many other coaching centers, tuition services were created based on the idea. Likewise, my dearest opponents, when an export industry is established, we see that many other small businesses, many other industries are created based on the same export industry. So my dearest opponents, these sectors, these opportunities have also increased our job opportunities in our country by 14%. Source, SaxaBank.com. Fourthly, my dearest opponents, economic development of any developing nation must have sufficient trade policies, according to Dr. Jaidi Sattar, Chairman of Policy Research Institute of Bangladesh. Trade policies can be categorized into two parts. Number one, inward-looking import substituting policy, and number two, outward-looking export print policy. Now, when you export something, it brings you profit with interest, while remittance only is a direct source of income. My other following speakers will have other points on this motion that they will continue on. To sum up, relying solely on remittance income is like keeping a pet goldfish in a fishbowl, and it's time we set our sights higher. Like trading that fishbowl for a giant aquarium, let's release our economic goldfish into the ocean of global commerce and watch it grow into a mighty economic well. With this, I conclude. Thank you, Honorable Moderator. Thank you all.
Now I would like to ask Cadet Zawad from Faujdarhat Cadet College to speak against the motion.
Respected Moderator, thank you for handing me the floor. Today's topic is developing an export-oriented business environment is a better driver of economy than relying on remittance income, and our staunch stand is against the motion. Respected Moderator and prudent panel of judges, first of all, let me state that the topic never mentioned that the economic type already exists. According to Cambridge Dictionary, the term developing an means to bring something new or to invent something. So we are not talking about export-oriented economies to be converted into remittance-oriented economies. Rather, we are talking about what the economic prospect of a country should be, which is still selecting its economic policies. Now, what makes a better driver? Economic driver, that is. Three things. First, boost economic growth directly or indirectly. Second, the boost reaches all people of the country. And third, that it is affected least during financial crisis. As the first speaker, I'll give example on how remittance money reaches the countryman better. My second speaker here will elaborate why it is extremely difficult for multiple countries to continue with export-oriented economy. And finally, my third speaker will elaborate why remittance-oriented economy is a lot more stable during financial crisis. And together, our team will prove to you why remittance is the better economic driver. Respected Moderator, now my dear opponents might say, prioritizing remittance means neglecting all other sectors, which is not true. Instead, remittance-dependent economy aims to improve other economic driving factors, including social factors, trade, and obviously employment. Take Tajikistan as an example. To a report of International Labour Organization named Migrant Remittances to Tajikistan in 2008, remittances were accounted for a whopping 2.67 billion USD, or 48% of the GDP. Dear opponents, how do you think a country that earns half of its GDP develops its internal economic drivers? Yes, it's obvious, through remittance. Owing to remittance, its economy has grown rapidly between 1998 to 2019. Now, the question might ask, where did Tajikistan invest this amount of remittance earning? According to the Central Asian Bureau for Analytical Report, says 40% of it went to healthcare, education, and other social spheres, and 20% of it went to energy production. Now, as you see, Tajikistan, a developing country, has invested substantially in education and other economic drivers. Now, you may state that Tajikistan could have used it for export-oriented economy, but they didn't, because for export, you need industry, and for that, you need infrastructure. And we all know that for infrastructure, you need money. But domestic money is always subjected towards inflation, so we need foreign currency. And how are we supposed to get that? Respected Moderator, the only way is remittance. Now, developing these industries may seem directly more contributing in the long run, but indirectly remittance is extremely better. Not only that, also in reaching towards people and alleviating their poverty. How, you might ask? Respected Moderator, imagine I'm economically insolvent and you happen to be a family member of mine. Now, you're working abroad and the money you would be sending to me would be personally obtained by me with some marginal reduction. The rest of the money I can directly use for ensuring food, clothes, getting educated, and becoming a skillful human resource. On the other hand, if an LDC like South Sudan were to focus on export, yes, it would obviously earn money. In fact, 95% of their export income comes from oil, which contributes hugely towards its economy. But have you thought how exactly will the state use this money towards the people of the country? Respected moderators, South Sudan comes with a civil unrest continuing since its independence. Plus, there are business syndicates, middlemen, money laundering, and corruption. The money that came will be used for the countrymen, but only after a big part of the money going into the pockets of several layers of middlemen. My dear opponents, in a world filled with majority of middle-income countries and LDCs that have such middlemen, syndicates, and corruption, even if you happen to focus on an export-oriented economy, be it $1 billion or $100 billion, still the money won't reach the countrymen. Respected moderator, the economic design of an export-oriented economy is like carrying coal to Newcastle, whereas our target is to make an inclusive economy. Over long periods of time, only this kind of economy sustain. But if economies aren't inclusive, then some people would suffer extremely during random shocks. Like currently, people are suffering due to price hikes and inflation of currencies. So, dear opponents, let's avoid making the rich richer and poor poorer. Respected moderator, as our third speaker will elaborate how money from export goes into the foreign paying backs of imports, raw materials, investment, foreign professionals, garment owners, and only a marginal portion reaches the worker. However, invest this money into the remittance worker and you would have made these poor people richer. So, with this, I'd like for all to sing in tune that relying on remittance is a better economic driver than developing an export-oriented business environment. With this, I'd like to conclude my speech here. Thank you, respected moderator, judicious panel of educators. Thank you. Thank you all.
Now, may I ask Cadet Rafa to speak for the motion.
Bangladesh basket case no more. A Wall Street Journal headline read in 2010, the country gladly evolved from the basket case or bottomless basket, a definition given to the newly independent war-torn Bangladesh by U.S. National Security Advisor Henry Kissinger. Now coming to the present Bangladesh, we have risen to the emerging tiger economy, and I think it's all thanks to exports. Most honorable moderator, judicious panel of judges, thank you for giving me the floor. In 2015, Bangladesh has fulfilled all criteria for graduation from UN's least developed country LDC status to lower middle income country. The year 2026 has been set for Bangladesh's graduation to developing country status, and for more than obvious reasons, it is possible due to efficient export-driven trade policies. As my first speaker has already mentioned, as per Dr. Sattar, research shows that an important substituting policy and vaguely remittance cannot improve our economy. Our esteemed economists and policymakers of the government has given huge and due importance to export, which is the reason that led to such magnificent and resilient economic development. Now, as your first speaker has already mentioned, that exports do not make poverty reduction. According to Dr. Zaidi Sattar, researchers show that an open trade with the world economy fosters growth and poverty reduction. As we switch to an economy that allows export-led trading strategies, World Bank labeled Bangladesh itself as a globalizer. The country now has its own export-led model, the Bangladesh way. Now let me highlight some facts why we should rely on exports. First of all, exports generate economic sovereignty. Developing an export-oriented business environment allows a country to have more control over its economic state. Depending heavily on remittance income can make a nation overly reliant on another country's needs, government, and economy. Second of all, innovation and technological advancements. Export-oriented businesses often require innovation and technological advancement to remain strong with high international competitiveness. Third point, infrastructure development. Exporting often requires substantial infrastructure development such as ports, transportation, and networks, as well as energy facilities. Fourth point, job creation. Yes, exports create job employments, fosters innovation, as my first speaker has already mentioned. Let's hold our garments factory, for example. We can see that at least a few thousand people are involved in only one chain of a garments alone, with a multiplier effect. My dear opponent, as you've said, that remittance is in fact reliable and stable, but I want to clarify, remittance in fact is not stable. According to Bangladesh Bank's Statistic Department report, during financial year 2022, remittance received was $21.032 billion The remittance GDP ratio was 4.56%. Now, my dear opponent, take a note that the export earnings ratio of the country of 2022 was 12.88% of GDP. For the financial year 2023, remittance received was 21.611 billion US dollars. Again, take a note that the export earnings of the country of 2023 was 55.55 billion US dollars, and the export earnings GDP was 11.44% of GDP. I'm sure my dearest opponents are not so weak in mathematics to fail to see such clear mathematical data which shows that export has approximately 3 times more impact on GDP than remittance. In actuality, remittance has even less impact on economic growth, which I will highlight soon. You have been singing the same song and mentioning how remittance has helped our economy and boosted our monetary conditions. But let me remind you, my dear opponent, remittance never held any long-term promises. Honorable moderator, dearest opponents, a quote often goes by, give a man a fish and he will be hungry again tomorrow. Teach him to catch a fish and he will be richer for all his life. Dear opponents, for foreign currency, don't you think we should all rely, rather than relying on remittances sent from abroad, we should develop strong infrastructures to earn foreign currency through export-led trades. Bangladesh's development has largely been driven by one export sector, the ready-made garment sector. Despite the fact that textile and apparel sector still remains the predominant contributor to the country's earnings, and apparel sector still remains the predominant contributor, export earnings, other most exported products of Bangladesh such as frozen fish, pharmaceutical home textile, leather products, agro products, and plastic products are emerging progressively. Recent fresh vegetable export from Jazeera Shayatpur to European countries, especially Swiss chain stores, is a milestone leap. Government has also been developing huge export facilitating infrastructure like Paira Port, Moashkali Deep Sea Port, rail and road infrastructure, etc. In near future, basing on these exports-driven business environment, Bangladesh's economy will become emerging tiger in the world map. And then, my dearest opponents, we will be able to return our millions of extremely low-wage workers that you call expatriates and remittance workers working in inhuman conditions in Middle Eastern countries and other countries so that we can all live happily ever after. Leaving this note, I'd like to end here. Thank you all.
Now I would like to invite Cadet Sajid to speak against the motion.
Fertilizer industry is in scarcity of gas. Source 7 September 23, Prothom Alum. But according to my opponents, I think we have to run an industry without electricity. Yes, respected moderator, prudent panel of judges, my wise opponents and August gathering, Assalamu alaikum. Let us all dive into a world of imagination, where Bangladesh starts exporting and manufacturing semiconductors from tomorrow. But will Bangladesh be able to compete with countries like Taiwan, when Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC, is the world's largest contract chip maker and produces around 90% of the world's leading such conductors? The answer is no, my opponents. Countries will even prefer buying such important raw materials from promising manufacturers rather than choosing a newcomer in the industry. Now, obviously, Bangladesh cannot manufacture semiconductors to such an extent that they can be exported immediately. But what we can do is export jute, according to my second speaker of the opponents. But according to the latest report by Bangladesh Jute Mills Corporation, in these first 10 months of this fiscal year 2022-2023, the export of jute and jute for Bangladesh has been declined by 20.25% or $770.82 million US dollars. So, my learned opponents, how can we depend on an export-oriented business environment when it is nearly impossible to settle in an already crowded international market and when export jobs are so random? The question remains. Now, let me talk about 3 major challenges of an export-oriented economy. First, infrastructure investment. Second, it is geography. And thirdly, it is external interference. Respected moderator, to favor one approach over the other, it is essential to recognize the fact that a country's economy relies on both export and remittances. This consideration must apply broadly as the International Monetary Fund, IMF, designates 152 countries as developing, indicating that the majority of the nations are yet to be developed. Insufficient capital resource can severely hamper a country's ability to innovate and compete in the global export arena. Consequently, isn't a sole reliance on export an inherently challenging path to economic development, my dear opponents? Please do answer. Respected moderator, exporting is very challenging and expensive for the geographical challenged countries, especially the ones that are landlocked. There are 44 landlocked countries in the world, which is 1/4 of the nations. Of these, the United Nations lists 32 countries as landlocked developing countries or LLDCs. Of these 32 LLDCs, 17 are considered as least developed countries. The World Bank data estimate showed that to export 1 container of cargo from LLDCs, it takes $3,204, which compared $1,268 for transit countries. But unfortunately, my opponents are living in a world where every country has its own ocean and every country is interconnected. Dear opponents, Please realize that remittance income is more inclusive than export income, as it benefits a huge number of populations, especially the ones in poor and rural households, as they receive their money directly from migrants living abroad without any external barriers and interference, which also means no corruption, no syndicate, no laundering, and obviously more efficiency. But in case of export income, the vulnerable money is such direct and indirect factors leading to less efficiency. Respected moderator, my opponents have constantly bragged about export economy, but I think they are very unaware of the recently going headlines throughout the country. The Daily Star reported on 5th of September 2023 that the garments industry has laundered 821 crore taka to 33 RNGs. How is that, my opponents? And how can we depend on an export-oriented business environment when your export-oriented business environment is also crime-oriented? I demand for an answer. Dear opponents, the aim of our debate is not only to find solution. We must know the wire is what are going to flow. We have to know that what is going to flow and which economy is better. Export will only be based on those areas which have better transportation. That's why you see all those fancy and posh cars in Chattogram. But what about those huts in the distant villages? Is exporting affecting them? The question remains. But remittance come from these left-outs. Focus here, dear opponents. A better drive of economy should maintain a balanced growth of the population's lifestyle besides earning us all those dollars. Remittance is not bringing us the cash, but is also directly going in the hands of the people, and thus needs improving the overall lifestyle of the people. In turn, ensuring a sustainable and poverty growth of the poor lifestyle. That is what exactly meant by Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman when he said, our independence will only be meaningful when the sufferings of the farmers, laborers, and common people will come to an end. Our success lies in improving the poverty rate of people, my opponents. But they have constantly bragged about RMG, textiles, and I've been thinking that my mind has gone fully out of control after hearing their logics. Our success lies in improving the lives of poverty-ridden people, my opponents. So let's not argue for the sake of this debate anymore and agree with the fact that remittance is the better type of economy. I think I have successfully proved that through my speech, and I'm also successful with this optimistic hope that I'm capable of bringing my opponent's mindset to the right path. I'd like to conclude my speech here. Thank you, respected moderator, adjudicators, my wise opponents, August gathering for your kind and patient hearing.
Now I would like to ask Cadet Dazria from Mymensingh Girls Cadet College, the team leader, to speak for the motion.
Picture this. You are at a crossroad of your financial journey. One path offers immediate cash injections in your wallet and the other offers long-term economic growth, which would practically make your wallets burst with potential. And today, we are here to show you how the latter, or developing an export-oriented business environment, is the real golden ticket to a thriving economy. So hold on to your wallets because it's about to get thrillingly economic in here. Most honorable moderator, respected panel judges, esteemed opponents, enlightened guests, and curious minds. I welcome you all to this side of the house where me and my team are dissecting upon a matter of great economic significance. Firstly, learned opponent, you made a big mistake when you mentioned that remittance income is more stable during financial crisis, but in fact, we do not have any direct control over the remittance inflow. If the host country changes its economic policies and currency exchange rates, that can affect the value of expatriates' incomes, saving, and investments. And exchange rate fluctuations can lead to financial instability for expatriates. And according to the article published only 2 days ago in Dhaka Tribune, even though our country increased labor export up to 618,000 in the last 6 months and had a record of 1.136 million in the last year, the remittance inflow decreased by 21.57% in August. And bankers suggest that this decline in expatriate remittance is linked to banks offering lower rates than market dealers, resulting in reduced official channel usage and a rise in illegal and corrupted methods. Handi, you mentioned that remittance does not promote corruption, right? But our recent study conducted by the Refugee and Migratory Movement Research Unit found that 66% of Bangladeshi expatriates living in Maldives send money through the corrupted method, Hyundai, and 64% of them do not have any bank accounts. So, well, it seems like our economic ship is sailing without a captain. Well, isn't it high time we charted a new course with robust export-oriented business environment and learn upon it? Second speaker, for the part where you tried to mention that over-reliance on exports can make an economy highly vulnerable to global market fluctuations, to that I say, developing an export-oriented business environment allows a country to have more control over its economic destiny, and depending heavily on remittance income can make the country overly reliant on external factors which are not in their hands. Export-oriented economies can adapt and diversify their market products, reducing risks, and this diversification can enhance economic stability. Dear opponents, the stable growth of the economy and GDP of Bangladesh is no longer the imagination. It was hinged upon the stable growth of export, which was 5.7 billion US dollars from 1999 to the 2000s, and it transformed into 52 billion US dollars from in that 2021 and 2022, according to BBS. And according to World Trade Organization, countries with open and export-oriented economies have experienced higher GDP growth rates than those relying on remittances. So I ask you, do we want to be known as a nation that's dependent on the generosity of our expatriates, or do we want to be known as a nation that's actively contributing to the global economy? And shining chairs, Bangladesh is a developing nation that has defied the odds of resource constraint, and despite being shouldered with a massive population of approximately 170 million, Bangladesh successfully accelerated growth with macroeconomic stability. Since 2010, the trade has played a crucial role in the Bangladesh development. The country's midterm national policy, the 3 5-year plans from 2009, and long-term policies, that is the long perspective plan of 2021 and 2041, have unequivocally embraced trade and export-led growth. Dear opponents, these economic policies of Bangladesh shows that economy does not suggest that it should rely on remittances. Rather, it clearly suggested that economic growth should be strongly based on industrialization and trade diversification with export-led. According to a research article on the widespread impact of remittances by Dr. Catalina, University of California, and Dr. Susan Pozzo of Western Michigan University, USA, published by ISEA Germany, described that besides the good impacts of remittances, they can increase the consumption of non-tradable goods, raise their prices, and cause inflation and decrease exports, thus damaging the remittance-receiving countries' competitiveness in the world market. And remittances have less macroeconomic impact on the economic development of the country, and they are more beneficial in case of poverty reduction, yes, as you have mentioned, but they have less contribution in the economic growth. So, in conclusion, gentlemen, while remittances offer a short-term financial boost, genuine economic prosperity hinges on our capacity to innovate and thrive globally. Investing in an export-oriented business environment isn't merely a choice, it's a strategic investment in our future, paving the way for financial stability, job opportunities, and sustainable growth. Let's opt for economic independence and set sail for a broader and brighter, more prosperous tomorrow. On this very note, I'd like to conclude my speech here. Thank you, Honorable Moderator. Thank you, everyone.
Now, may I request Cadet Shafin to put forward his arguments against the motion. And he is the team leader from Faujdarhat Cadet College.
Respected moderator, thank you for providing the floor. My dear opponents, imagine you are in a situation that you don't have paper for writing your debate script. Why? Because you simply cannot afford it. Surprise? Well, this was the situation in Sri Lanka a few months back, as they had no forex reserves for the payment of fuel, food, or paper, and your so-called export industry, near zero. But my dear opponents, recently, Sri Lanka has paid back 50 million US dollars of its 200 million loan to Bangladesh. Now, how did they recover from this bankruptcy? Well, if you didn't know, in 2022, Sri Lanka sent a total of 311,000 professionals abroad, which made it the highest in their history. And the result? Remittance increased by 76% with 541 million US dollars in July 23 alone. And according to the Professor of Economics, Priyanka Dunusinghe of Columbia University, the Sri Lankan economy was a better driver because of the remittance. Now, if my dear opponents point out industrial production of Sri Lanka to increase, please know that it was remittance that gave them a stable floor for economy. Respected moderator, the third speaker mentioned that remittance is not a stable driver for our economy, but let me prove you wrong. Even during the great economic recession of 2008, where world economies fell apart, millions were left unemployed, our economy stood firm. Back in 2008, the volume of trade decreased by 7.1%. Export orders of RMG fell by 17.6%. Fish exports decreased by 16%. And lastly, jute exports decreased by a mammothing 19.7%, respected moderator. But despite of all of these adversities, our economy was left untouched just because of our income from remittances. So now, even if my dear opponents find it hard to believe in my words, then I humbly request you to open the Bangladesh Global Studies book of Class 8, page 77. August President, the first speaker of my opponent's team emphasized a lot about the revenues coming from exports, but I think that they have completely forgotten how our remittance sector has developed and is also contributing magnificently to our economy. Well, first of all, my dear opponents, Bangladesh has received a total of $21.56 billion remittance in the fiscal year of 2023, which is 2.75% higher than that of the previous fiscal year, in which we also received $21.03 billion US dollars, as per the reports of Bangladesh Songbat Songtha. So this clearly proves that these aren't just dollars wrapped with love, but these are the dollars that are contributing to our national economy, my dear opponents. Well, my dear opponents, I'm sure you will know about the fact that the foreign reserves of Bangladesh skyrocketed to a record high of 46 billion US dollars during the COVID-19 pandemic thanks to remittances. But this feat turned into a misfortune in the recent years as the recent IMF report stated that the forex reserves dipped down to 23.7 billion US dollars. Now, why did this happen, my dear opponents? It is solely because of the payment of the imported goods and covering of the deficits caused by a mountainous imports compared to that of a less advanced export as confirmed by Bangladesh Bank itself. So, August presents, it is clear that Bangladesh is not going to overtake the imports via exports anytime soon. So if this charade continues, then it will be no wonder that our external deficit might even sum up to $1 trillion. Now, at that time, you and I both, my dear opponents, will be helpless in witnessing our nation to drown in a miserable condition that Sri Lanka had faced earlier. We wouldn't be able to recover even by selling ourselves more than 10 times. So once again, we are just relying on remittances for a better driver of the economy. Respected moderator, today my opponents have talked about developing an export-based economy based on their current booming effect. But nevertheless, the ready-made garment sector, which has been our golden year throughout the years, has no long-term future as our country is likely to be affected. After graduating from the least developed countries in 2026, if the duty-free opportunity is warded off, our country is likely to suffer from the dust disease. Now, you might ask what this dust disease is. The term dust disease emerged in Netherlands after gas discovery in the Northern Sea in 1959. Initially, Netherlands' economy has started booming by massive exports of gas, but when the stock finished, the economy faced an economic recession. Now, why did this happen, dear opponents? This is simply because they had given little concern to other alternative sectors. So if Bangladesh wants to avoid this dust disease, they must give attention now to search and promote other alternative sectors. And the income through remittances could be one. So my dear opponents, time and again, we are showing our faces to this remittance as a sign of hope. Now, dear opponents, think closely. It is impressive that we receive a total of 46.2 billion US dollars by exporting ready-made garments, yes. But have you ever acknowledged the fact that how much Bangladesh has to spend in buying the raw materials from China and India just to assemble and make those high-quality products? Well, I've got the answer for you. The Observatory of Economic Complexity reports that the top imports of Bangladesh in 2021 were raw cotton, pure cotton, yarn, reed, and light rubberized knitted fabric. And that's not all. Bangladesh's import was a massive 82.49 billion US dollars. And these imported products clearly indicate the trade imbalance of more import expense of the raw materials and compared to less export profit of Bangladesh. Moreover, former governor of Bangladesh Bank, Atir Rahman, has said that remittance helps in the micro and macro economies of Bangladesh. So I strongly believe we look for solutions that apply to all. So for betterment of the country, for a better future for all, remittance income is not only feasible, but also makes the economy immune to random global crisis, as I've already mentioned. So with this hope that our dear opponents come to this side of the House, I, Cadet, conclude here. Thank you, August Presidents, for a kind and patient hearing.
Thank you so much. Now we have reached the rebuttal phase. And in rebuttal phase, I would like to ask Cadet Tazria to speak for the motion. And she's the team leader of Mymensingh Girls Cadet College.
Thank you, Honorable Moderator, for giving me the floor once again. So I'd like to start my speech with thanking my opponents because they have realized that export earns money. And I'd like to congratulate you because you have clearly failed to prove your party positions. First speaker, you mentioned that remittance contributes 48% of the GDP of various countries. But according to the research of Dr. Catalina and Dr. Suzanne Pozo, the highest percentage of remittance to GDP from 2010 to 2020 was Tonga, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Somalia, Nepal, El Salvador, Haiti from 39% to 23% and gradually decreased. And dear opponents, do you think these countries with high percentage of remittance inflow are at all developed countries? If you find a relevant explanation to this case, if you're in your favor, please let us know. And I'm very sorry that I could not bring any newspapers with me, but my country's Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina said in 23rd July 2020, and it also made into news highlights that Bangladesh will not depend on remittance alone, and we will diversify products to expand the export basket for which new international markets have to be explored. And she calls that, and I quote that, we will no longer depend on only remittance, and we have to increase our production alongside diversifying export, and I unquote. And I'm sorry that I couldn't bring the newspaper from 2 days ago that which say, according to Dhaka Tribune, Bangladesh increased the export labor up to 618,000, but still the remittance dropped by 21.57% in August. And China in 2020 had 3.6 billion US dollars in their economy due to export and export only. And second speaker, you said the jute, you talked about jute decline, but my second speaker never mentioned about jute exports. And the research, yes, the research of Dr. Catalina and Susan Pozo also mentioned that remittances can disadvantage the economy via the Dutch disease you mentioned, third speaker. And second speaker, you mentioned the difficulties of export-oriented business environment, but the initial difficulties cannot overweight the contribution it brings to us. And third speaker, you mentioned about the COVID-19. Even in the COVID-19, the worst sufferers were the remittance workers, and 5 lakh Bangladeshi expatriates could not even bring the remittance to the country. On this very note, I'd like to conclude my speech. Thank you all moderators. Thank you everyone.
Thank you so much. Now I would like to ask Cadet Shafin to speak against the motion. And he is the team leader of Faujdarhat Cadet College.
Thank you, respected moderator, for giving me the floor once again. My opponent's second speaker told us to take notes, and I think I just wasted all my paper writing the same notes again and again. While my opponent's misconceptions might seem convincing at first, they stand in a position at which it does not withstand closer inspection. Now let's delve into why. First of all, respected moderator, my dear opponents have again and again emphasized on how export brings money, but have they mentioned how much of it goes into debt, buying raw materials, maintenance, and how much of it goes into the hands of the people? Have they addressed the enormous direct and indirect contribution of remittance economy? Did they mention whether or not export economy meets all the 3 factors stated by our first speaker? Have they mentioned how the living standards of unemployed people and their families can be upgraded to export economy? No, because if they did, then remittance would have come right to the spotlight and they would have to agree with us. Moreover, respected moderator, my opponents asked how we are prioritizing remittance when we are living in Bangladesh, an RMG-dependent country. Well, I guess they haven't listened to my previous analysis of how Bangladesh survived on remittance rather than exports during the global recessions. Moreover, my dear opponent's third speaker mentioned illegal channel of money transfers in the name of sending remittance workers. But my dear opponents, you will see these are occurring because they are not finding feasible ways for migration. When a country focuses on remittance, then it would create and strengthen such policies and laws, ensuring the rights of expatriates, provide incentives for sending remittance through legal channels, and bring expatriates under universal pension. And we stand for ensuring these. Respected moderator, today my opponents have skillfully skipped replying to the 821 crore money laundering scam mentioned by our second speaker. Couldn't we use this money to empower countless people suffering in countless amount of villages? Well, my dear opponents, if not, then probably you were suggesting that money laundering as a better driver of the economy. Moreover, my dear opponents have been repeatedly trying to impose an export-oriented economy drive. But nevertheless, have you ever thought about how the money earned through this export is going to reach to the hands of the people who have their eyes darted towards the last hope of relying on their beloved ones? No, my dear opponents, obviously not. Because in that case, directly or indirectly, remittance would have come to the spotlight. Well, it is not always possible for the government to split those earned money amongst each and every citizen who are living in a distant island. Now, at the very end of my speech, I'd like to quote Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman in the National Parliament speech of 25 January 1975. He said, Inshallah, one day Sonar Bangla will shine. Inshallah, the people of Sonar Bangla will have their stomachs full. Inshallah, the people of Sonar Bangla will be happy again. With this, I'd like to conclude my speech here. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much. We have actually enjoyed a very absorbing debate, and both the teams have spoken so convincingly with their facts and figures for the motion as well as against the motion. And the topic was also very interesting. Developing an export-oriented business environment is a better driver of our economy than relying on remittance. The speakers who spoke for the motion highlighted the importance of export-oriented business. It's true, export can also boost our economy, but it's also true that remittance can contribute significantly to our economy. So both the teams have spoken very logically, convincingly, and very confidently. And I would like to congratulate both of them, both the teams. And now we're waiting for the result. I hope the best speakers will be the champions, and the team which will say become the runner-up also deserves thanks because they have also spoken nicely. So we are waiting for the result, and the judges have judged very impartially, judiciously. I would like to thank them for this wonderful activity. And with the throbbing heart, the debaters are waiting for the result. Let's see what happens. So, according to the judgment of the honorable judges, today's winning team is Faujdarhat Cadet College. I would like to congratulate all the speakers from Faujdarhat Cadet College. And the best speaker is Cadet Shafin, the team leader of Faujdarhat Cadet College. So thank you very much for putting up a wonderful show, and I hope you will make wonderful citizens, very rational citizens, who will contribute significantly to building our smart Bangladesh as dreamt of by our Honorable Prime Minister, the worthy daughter of our father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. We hope these debaters will make wonderful citizens, very upright, honest, very rational, and very smart citizens. And I would like to thank you very much for putting up this wonderful show. And both the team deserve thanks and congratulations. Thank you so much.
ফাইনাল রাউন্ডের এক তুমুল লড়াইয়ের পর আমি প্রাপন্তি চক্রবর্তী আপনাদের সকলকে স্বাগত জানাচ্ছি বাংলাদেশ টেলিভিশন চট্টগ্রাম কেন্দ্র আয়োজিত ফার্স্ট ইন্টার স্কুল ইংলিশ ডিবেট কম্পিটিশনের সমাপনী পর্ব এবং পুরস্কার বিতরণী অনুষ্ঠানে। তবে তার আগে জেনে নেব আমাদের আজকের অনুষ্ঠানে সম্মানিত প্রধান অতিথি এবং বিশেষ অতিথি হিসেবে কারা কারা উপস্থিত রয়েছেন। প্রধান অতিথি হিসেবে উপস্থিত আছেন তথ্য ও সম্প্রচার মন্ত্রণালয়ের মাননীয় মন্ত্রী ডক্টর হাসান মাহমুদ মহোদয়। বিশেষ অতিথি হিসেবে উপস্থিত আছেন 21 পদকপ্রাপ্ত বিশিষ্ট সাংবাদিক এবং দৈনিক আজাদী পত্রিকার সম্পাদক জনাব এম.এ. মালেক স্যার। এর সাথে সাথে আরও উপস্থিত আছেন চট্টগ্রাম বিভাগের বিভাগীয় কমিশনার জনাব মোহাম্মদ তোফায়েল ইসলাম এবং সর্বশেষ চট্টগ্রাম বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়ের ইংরেজি বিভাগের চেয়ারম্যান প্রফেসর ডক্টর সুকান্ত ভট্টাচার্য। আমাদের আজকের আয়োজনে সভাপতিত্ব করছেন বাংলাদেশ টেলিভিশন চট্টগ্রাম কেন্দ্রের জেনারেল ম্যানেজার জনাব নূর আনোয়ার হোসেন রঞ্জু মহোদয়। প্রিয় সুধী, এবারে প্রধান অতিথির বক্তব্য রাখবেন মাননীয় তথ্য ও সম্প্রচার মন্ত্রী ডক্টর হাসান মাহমুদ।
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to you all. And today the final has been already taken place, and two team good institution of the country, Faujdarhat Cadet College and Mymensingh Girls Cadet College, has participated, and I congratulate both the team. The topic of the debate, developing an export-oriented business environment, is better driver of our economy than relying on remittance income. So this is difficult indeed. Opposing this motion, winning the debate is not easy. So that difficult task has been done by Faujdarhat Cadet College. That's why I congratulate you, the Faujdarhat Cadet College. So I would request you, because we dream for a country, a developed country, we dream for a developed country. We don't dream for a country just infrastructurally developed country. We want to transform Bangladesh as social welfare state and humane state. Because just infrastructural development is not sustainable. What you've seen over the last 100 years, a lot of development has taken place in Europe, but humanity has been evaporated there, has been gone. We should not develop our country in the same manner. We should make a social welfare state and a humane state. So for that, you have to have dream for yourself, for your family, and for the society. We have shown our talent in the world arena. So if we can nurture and flourish our talent, then we can conquer the world. I request you to have dream, and to have dream that I would conquer the world. I would conquer the country. I would conquer the world. Then you can. You can conquer the world. You can conquer the country. Finally, I congratulate both the team and their teachers, and I congratulate VTV GM and his team, who has given a lot of effort in organizing this event for last couple of months. Thanks to you all. Joy Bangla, Joy Bangabandhu.
প্রিয় সুধী, আমরা এবারে চলে যাব আমাদের পরবর্তী পর্বে, পুরস্কার বিতরণী পর্ব। রানার্স আপ দলের বিতার্কিকদের একে একে মঞ্চে ডেকে নেব। মেডেল ও সার্টিফিকেট